It was scary because, I was in the music industry. At the time I was doing, the last 10 years, I had a 15-year music career. The last 10 years was 300 shows a year. At 25 years old, I got a reality TV show. I was on ABC. And then, we were talking about video production earlier today. I had these music videos out. My YouTube was cranking. I just released a music video with the Nashville Ballet in it. It was choreographed by the actual Nashville Ballet, this huge production shoot and everything. And I just felt like there's something more than this, And at that time, my niece was born terminally disabled. She was having over 300 seizures a day. And I know that sounds like we're taking a sidetrack here, but it's how the paleo thing happened. Because around that time, I've always been obsessed with fitness since I played hockey for 10 years when I was a kid, started lifting weights at 15. I got into jiu-jitsu. I was a boxer. I did Olympic lifting, CrossFit twice a day, all these crazy things. And my body just never looked the way that I wanted it to. I felt like I was like really busting my ass and still kind of chubby, And appearance matters in the music industry. So I was always kind of obsessed and had disordered eatings and all these things. Once I found paleo, it was a documentary called The Perfect Human Diet by C.J. Hunt, which is still epic. Go watch it for sure.
I haven't even heard of it.
Amazing. It's just like human nutrition through an anthropology lens. Makes sense, right? It's like
it sounds like that's what we should be thinking about.
Exactly. The way I say it to new clients coming into the programs, I'm just like, listen, you could hike through the forest every day for the next 100 years. You're never going to stumble upon a bagel tree. Not going to happen.
Where's that bagel tree? They might be making that in the lab somewhere right now, but
exactly. So that was like this kind of aha moment. And then I did my first paleo reset, and I dropped like 10% body fat. It was I was like, what? This is like, I don't have to work so hard in the gym. This is crazy, Yeah. And so I started getting really deep into nutrition and studying it just as like a hobby. I actually became a certified nutritional therapist as a hobby so that my workouts could be more effective. And I learned about paleo and all this stuff. And right around that time was when my niece was born. And she was moved to the pediatric ICU. They put a feeding tube in her stomach. It's called a G tube. She was given less than 3 years to live. It's like, she's terminally disabled. This baby's going to die, basically. So I was at, Vanderbilt Neurology, Centennial Hospital in Nashville, and this was my first introduction to the ketogenic diet. They give these babies a keto diet to stop seizures. Wow. And so they put Savannah on a ketogenic diet, but it's mainstream medicine. So quality is not taken into consideration here. So Gerber makes a baby formula, ketogenic baby formula called KetoCal. And I checked the ingredients. It's high fat, low carb, but all the fats are vegetable oils, artificial flavors and sweeteners, synthetic vitamins, not like usable forms of the vitamins. Brought it to the neurologist's attention, and he said, I never thought to check that. And that was it. It's like red pill moment.
That was just like wheels are off at that point.
Exactly.
You're going all in on this.
Yeah, totally. So it was like I went all in. I actually worked on essentially a baby formula in my kitchen. Food dehydrators, food processors. I took paleo superfoods and made these powders that you could then mix with water, dehydrated powders. And I'd read the 4 Hour Work Week. I was hating the music industry at that point. I was just burnt out, going to bed at 6 o'clock in the morning, 300 nights a year, And I was like, I can do something with this. It was cleared by Vanderbilt Neurology to give to Savannah in her G-tube, which was amazing. So she's now getting like nutrient-dense whole foods instead of toxic sludge. But I actually took a bunch of salmon collagen, beef collagen, protein, added it to that formula, got an actual manufacturer. And that was my first ever e-com project. So I launched the Perfect Paleo Powder. And one of my like debut moments was Paleo FX. New up and coming entrepreneur. I didn't know anything about anything. I didn't have the money for a booth. And Michelle and Keith Norris at Paleo FX were like, we'll hook you up. They gave me like a huge discount, gave me a booth at Paleo FX. My dad and I stacked hundreds of bottles of Perfect Paleo Powder in an SUV and drove, 19 hours or whatever down to Austin, set up a booth at Paleo FX. Right across the lane from me is Dry Farm Wines. And there's David Allred. And he's just super friendly, comes over, says what's up. Hey, we're having this party, blah, 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 blah. Takes me to this party. I met Robb Wolf. I met Abel James, who's now back here in Austin, who's one of my best friends. I love him. So I met Robb Wolf, Abel James, Mark Sisson. First time I met Mark Sisson. I met Diana Rodgers.
Wow.
And then me, Diana, and Robb ended up working together because I was one of the funders for Sacred Cow, the documentary in 2016. And next thing I know, I'm like in the middle of Paleo FX at the event. I'm in my gi and I'm rolling jiu-jitsu with Robb Wolf. And the last several years, I'm listening to Robb Wolf's podcast. I'm listening to Abel James' podcast. I'm like listening to all these shit. Now they're like my homies. I was like, it was so quick. And it was this kind of like, it was really kind of my first introduction to, I think we kind of create our own reality,
Yeah.
And then here we are 10 years later or whatever. I guess that was 2016. So 8 years since that first Paleo FX. But it was transformative, man. And the early days, it really, really, Paleo FX ended up blowing up a couple years ago or whatever, but it was a super cool community. Like, I don't think I met anybody at Paleo FX where I was like, this person is fully self-serving. It was like everyone had a transformation story. Like Robb Wolf's digestion was horrible for years and he couldn't figure it out, and people told him to eat whole grains and it got worse and whatever. And like Abel had his own transformation story and like was on death's door, like doing what his doctor was telling him in his mid-20s. Like it was just everybody had a story like mine or like my nieces, like Savannah's, right? So like everybody came to this place where like, yeah, we were all passionate about entrepreneurship, but it was like, I think there's a term for it, like passion-based profits or something like that, where it's like we all cared so much about what we were doing that it felt like a cool little family. And you mentioned this about when you were coming up early and you met Justin Mayers. Just people that had found so much success, or like in my mind, these people are almost like celebrities because I'm listening to them on a podcast and it feels like celebrity-esque. And then they're so sweet. They're so nice. Like I was like, imposter syndrome. Like I've never had business before with it. And everyone's just like, yo, you want to come hang out? And I was like, yes, I do want to hang out, And it was magic. And I made like lifelong friendships and got involved in really cool projects. And here we are.
This might be naive of me to think this, but you said that was the first time that you like thought of like you can create your own reality. And I would think that as a musician, there's so much bandwidth in terms of just like everyone talks about the struggling artist, and the first struggling artist I think of is musicians because it's such a hard path to go down. But I mean, you actually reached a point of having a large amount of success in music. So like, I would have thought that maybe that was when you like were thinking about that concept of creating your own reality. Is there something specific about just like entering a new space and having it kind of just be like a blank slate? Is that kind of why it felt like that?
Yeah, well, by that point, I had played with psychedelics, where previously I had not. I'd never done, when I first did ayahuasca about 10 years ago, my first ever psychedelic experience was ayahuasca in the jungle with Don Howard. I got myself down to Peru, and it was terrifying. I did Mount Everest first, It was like I'd never taken a mushroom, I never tried anything. But the music industry is like very alcohol heavy, so I drank a lot of alcohol, and that was about it. And it never really struck me that I had created this reality. Like I started playing piano when I was 8 years old, and adults were freaking out. They're like, this is the next Billy Joel. It was crazy. And I became like kind of a little small town celebrity. Like in my hometown at 17 years old, I was making $250 an hour playing piano.
Wow.
It was crazy. Just
That's
like, what?
unreal.
And then I went to Berklee College of Music in Boston, and I placed in all these songwriting contests and stuff. So they took me down to Nashville, and I'm in the studio with Vince Gill and Reba McEntire and all these like huge people. Then I moved down to Nashville. And I mean, within about 8 months of being in Nashville, like I heard this thing of like, you're going to play for tips and you make $40 a night, whatever. And I was like 8 months into my Nashville career, and I was making six figures and had full health benefits. And I was like, this starving artist thing is bullshit. This isn't true.
Really?
I'm like, and I really just like turned it into something really cool. It was awesome. And, by 25, I'd like bought a couple houses and stuff. And like, it's actually, you're the first person to ask me that question. It's odd. I've never gone back and been like, how did I not see that I was creating that reality? I still was of the belief that life was happening to me. Just like, oh, this is how it goes. Things happen in life, and like, I can play piano, and seems I can make some money doing it that way. But I was never doing like visualizations, or I wasn't meditating. I wasn't doing anything like that. I just was like, this is how it goes, I guess. I was on autopilot.
Right. Yeah, I guess it's interesting that you've been doing music for so long. So like it just probably felt like more of the same track that you had been on. But this pivot into the health space is so cool, and I think it's inspiring for a lot of people. Like Brett and myself, neither of us have a background in the health and wellness space. We played college sports, but us getting into this whole movement started with us writing Twitter threads and just kind of like putting ourselves out there. And I really resonate with the idea of just feeling for the first time like I actually have so much more control of the outcomes that are happening in my life. The things that are happening to me are a direct result of my beliefs and then the things that I'm actually doing in the world. And so, things that had kept me from going out and going after that business idea or just getting into the health and wellness space, that to me always just felt like something I wasn't going to be able to do, or, for whatever reason, it just wasn't a track that I was interested in pursuing right after school. I'm like, looking back, I'm like, dude, I wish I had just started that track sooner. But everything happens the time it's supposed to.
Totally.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting kind of like when the mind tricks that happen in your brain, because I think the same thing, man. Because I'm around so many people, like now I know all these like 8 and 9 figure entrepreneurs, right? I'm like, man, if I would have found e-commerce when I was 18, I'd be so much richer. It's like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I'm also like, no, man, like everything that I went through, actually like catastrophic business things that happened to me are how I ended up in this mastermind in Croatia, which is where I met my fiance, my now fiance. She was a super successful entrepreneur. She was a keynote speaker at this event. Like, the most successful company I own right now is an Amazon company. I met my Amazon partner at that event, and none of those things could have happened the way that they did, because everything happens the only way it could have. We're here in the present moment because it's the only way things could have gone.
Totally.
And it's a fun little mind trick to be like, what if I learned e-commerce at 18 years old when Google ads were a penny per impression? You know what I mean? Like who knows what would have happened, but I wouldn't be here. And I love here. I'm happy to be here. You know?
Yeah, totally. So you get through your first Paleo FX, you're in the space. Mm-hmm. What draws you to continue to keep going and just like push further into putting the, because I think when I think about you and the, you know, the style of, you know, you're putting out products, but I really resonate with the content that you put out. Mm-hmm. You know, you've put out a lot of volume when it comes to podcasts and just great information. So what kept you kind of going in that direction?
Yeah, it was interesting. What happened was I didn't know. I mean, now, especially in Austin, right? You throw a rock and you hit a coach, you know?
Dude,
so it's like,
especially where we are right now.
Exactly. And that wasn't a thing, you know, in 2016. I didn't really know many people that were doing that. I'd heard of some people doing some cool stuff with ClickFunnels and like Lady Boss and all these people that were doing some cool stuff. But I just thought, you know, that the path to like an 8-figure exit was like start a physical products brand, you know? So I was doing the supplement stuff. And then I did not know what I was doing. And I got involved with people who made big promises and turned out to be total shysters. And I lost a boatload of money. There was an actual criminal lawsuit. Like me and 4 other people sued these people. And like, I'm not supposed to talk about it or whatever. But like, it was gnarly. And I lost a ton of money up front in my first entrepreneurial endeavor. I'd manufactured a bunch of product that expired and had thousands of dollars of product got thrown away. It was really not good. And I was so afraid, or I was like, I can't spend money on this stuff, man. I can't lose any more money. And I had learned about Gary Vee. And he's just talking about like, just make content. Like the content model, he has like the Gary Vee content model or whatever. I was like, okay. And I just went live on Facebook one day and I called it an Ask Me Anything. I heard that term on Reddit or Twitter or whatever. I was like, I'll do an Ask Me Anything. Because I'd been researching for years at this point, health and wellness. And then just my friends on Facebook who started asking me questions, and I'd talk about like, you know, A1 versus A2 dairy, and people were like, what? I've never heard of this. And I was like, really? I kind of thought that some of the things I knew were common knowledge, and I realized they weren't. So that Asked Me Anything, I did it on a Wednesday night, and I ended up doing that for 115 weeks straight.
Wow. And
following Gary Vee's content model of just like, I'll make Instagram posts about it, I'll make YouTube posts about it. And that was when the community took off. I started a private Facebook group. That private Facebook group now has 11,500 members. I have 650,000 social media followers, email lists, the whole thing. And that was when everything shifted for me, because yes, I was passionate with what happened with Savannah, and I thought that my powder was the best powder in the world and it could help people. I didn't realize yet the extent to which I could help people.